Hello everyone, Don, back again with the next progress report on my War Corsair. The last video you've seen me, I was cutting out this plate, which is going to be an oil pan replacement. Again, this is the oil pan, and this is the new dry sump plate. So what happens now is somewhere in here I'll drill a hole, make a bung fitting, weld it on there, and that will be the oil drain hole to go into the oil tank. And then this is the pump inlet, which is also in the block, but the one in the block will be plugged. So the oil will come out, be picked up from here from the oil pump assembly, from the the sump. The oil sump, again, is going to be somewhere like up here or in the side someplace. So there'll be an oil line coming out of the bottom of the tank, wherever it comes out. It doesn't like to fit where you put it. But anyway, the oil tank, oil comes out, goes into the inlet of the pump, and then the drain hole, like a drain hole plug, it won't be a plug, it'll be a fitting with a hose on it going back into the tank. So the engine will blow the oil out of there into the oil tank, and then the pump will pick it up from there. So this is how it will all look once it's installed. I still have a little bit of work to do on the plate before it's done, but I just kind of got everything in position so everybody can finally see what my whole process is here. There's the two bolts and mounts. This engine is upside down, of course. So those two on the bottom go up here. It's the top mounts. Those two there. And then I still have to cut out the 3/8 inch thick aluminum plate to finish that, but I'm going to extend it a 1/2 inch taller. I'm going to move the alternator up a 1/2 inch, and that'll give me room to put a piece of 3/4 inch plate bolt to the top of the block, and it'll come in, and I'll run 2 bolts back through here into that aluminum plate. So that'll give it an extra anchor point on the motor. But in order to do it, I had to extend the bolt holes for the alternator mount. These can't move. These have to stay in that location. But I can make the mount taller, move the alternator up more, which will raise it up, and it'll also make it so I can reuse my old belt sitting there. This belt right here. Right now it's too long. I would need a shorter one, but by moving that alternator up, it brings it to a point where it's almost tight. So it'll be a lot less belt tension there to work. So this is how it's all going to be configured when it's done. And again, here's the 2 ears off the mount that will bolt this right directly to the block. That's one of the original engine mounts in the car, along with this mount up here, this mount over here. But these ones are on a 15-20 degree angle. These are completely flush with the block. Okay, let me show you what I got here. So these are just sitting there for reference. But there's the 3 holes for that. And this hole is an oil pan hole, which gets a bolt like so. Now all these bolts on here, all these bolts, I'm going to countersink all these 6mm holes to half the thickness, so 3/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch down. These bolts will be down inside, but there'll be Allen wrench, socket head cap screws, 6mm, and these will be bored out to fit the head, so the socket goes all the way down in there. And then I was mentioning, that one's right in the way of this mount. It's not going to clear. That I was going to need to drill a hole all the way through, bore it out so that bolt will pass through. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to countersink it so these bolts are all the same length. And then in this one, I'll transfer the hole from here into here, but it's just going to be big enough to fit the Allen wrench. So you put this bolt in place, just drop it in the hole, and then bolt this in from underneath with the countersink bolts. And then that bolt will just kind of be floating in there. And then when you put this plate on the motor, you just come down in through here with your Allen wrench onto that screw bolt, and I can tighten that one. And then the same thing here for this one. So these bolts will drop in, put that on there, run the 3 bolts into each one of them, and then bring the pan over and then start these screws down and then fill in the rest. So let's get these out of the way. You can see where the bolts are for the top ones. You can see them. And then, so let me take these couple screws out, and all these holes match perfect. These were a little off, so I had to bore them out a little bigger than I needed, but it's not going to hurt anything. I just got these in there, just kind of hold the plate in. And once I got this whole thing cut out, I had to do a little extra clearancing to get it to fit flush on the block. One of the clearance issues were these here. You can see they were drawn in, but they were literally touching, and they wouldn't fit good. I couldn't get this where I wanted it. And then the other problem, you can see there's a little notch right there on that one. Right here, because it is fitting the water pump housing and this little bit of the oil pump housing. You can see I knocked some of that down flat, but it still wasn't enough. This little cutout is hitting the water pump right there, so I had to notch it to get that to clear. And then on the bottom side, you can pretty much seen that while it was on the table, had to be notched this way to clearance this, so this would all fit flush on there. So that's the end product, pretty close to the end product. Oh, and then also this was in the way, so I did this little notch right there to clear that. This side wasn't a problem, so I was able to notch it there. I knew I had to cut this down. I took 250 off, but it wasn't enough. I had to take another 50 off to get it to clear this. I wasn't feeling comfortable with knocking this down too much. There's nothing here, but if you ever had to replace the oil pump or water pump, you'd have to regrind everything to get it to clear. So by taking it, it'd probably still need trimmed off if I ever had to replace it. So that's all cut out for that. So these will be countersunk, and this will be countersunk. So these bolts will be shorter by 1/4 inch than this one. So these three and these three all get countersunk, so they're flush. And those bolts, like I said, go down through and bolt into that, like so. So most people didn't understand what I was doing. These three bolts hold that, and then that bolt and that bolt will be captive, so they won't come on. But that's it. Probably the only thing I'm going to do is maybe I got a 1/8 inch, what we call 1/8 inch quarter round that will go, and I'll just take that edge off. I may run it around the outside here to, it doesn't really need to because that's the block side, but I did take that 1/8 inch and run it around here to do a little bevel pass. You can slightly see it, but I've got a quarter round, I've got 3/8 1/2 inch rounds that I can, that's just done on a router, just a handheld trim router. I've got 4 or 5 different bits, rollover beading router bits, carbide, and here's the router, little trim router. You can see those bits are what they call quarter. It does basically just a little rolled radius. Let me see if I can get this thing open. Kind of a pain, but you can see the idea here with the big ones. You can go all the way up to this big 1/2 inch roll, 3/8, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch. So I've got 2 of these 1/8 inches, and one of them is in this hand router. So I just put that on there and run it. The bearings, little ball bearing rides on the side, and you can adjust the depth on this. So I got it so it just kind of starts rounding. You can probably go a little more. If you go too far, you end up catching this shoulder, and you go too deep, and it leaves a line all the way around. So, but I'll probably change over and use this quarter round and put that edge on the bottom. So, I just noticed I've taken my bit apart here with my tool holder, and my collet busted. This is the biggest collet I can use, and it was a 5/16. Well, it broke, and then that's the only thing that holds these 8 millimeter end mills in. So this is the end mill. Again, it was a 3 fluke all carbide, and these are what I bought off of eBay. They were inexpensive, but my God, they do cut nice. These things are probably the sharpest, nicest ones I bought for the price. And then again, I started cutting it off, and it broke, but it was a lot longer. You know, I took off about 1 inch of this just to choke up on it. And what I did realize is when I was cutting it out, I was doing that tool path where it cut out the chunks, and this is what was left over, you know, from doing those profile cuts. Those were on all the corners, here, 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 and here. So when they get going through there and just make a trough, it starts chattering, starts howling real bad. And I was cutting at 12,000 RPM at 50 inches a minute. So I kept playing with the feeds and speeds on the program. You can manually go in there and bump up the spindle speed, the speed. You can crank up the feed rate on how fast it travels. So I just kept pushing it. And I finally ended up at, because it was howling real bad, I just kept increasing the speed on this, and it would get a little quieter. That pitch got higher and higher. And it finally got to the point where it was gone, and it took like 16,800 RPM. This motor can do 24,000. So 16.8, it barely made any chatter and cleaned up real nice, and then the cuts really improved. But I initially cut it so it was 30 thousandths of material left, so I could go back and do the final trim passes. So, and then I was able to go up to 60 to 65 inches a minute, and then I was trying to push it past that to like 68, and then I was coming down through here, and I heard it go clunk. The stepper motor skipped, and it threw it off, and it came in and started cutting high on this end, so I got it up here, and then I shut it off. So then I re-zeroed the machine home, and then went back in, modified the program so I could kind of pick up where I left off at that level. But I kept pushing it until it pushed too far. But I finally did, and then once I got it in there and reset to 0, it went right back in, made a perfect pass, and it was a little off on this end until I cut it all out. Then I went back and did just profile cleanup passes. I did like 3 separate passes at like a quarter of the way. This is about 3/4 thick, the plume, so every quarter of a step, I went quarter of 3, 750, but so I did a quarter to get through it, and then I went back and took it. I was like taking 20 thousandths off extra to clean it up, and then I went to a single pass at 10 thou, and I went a second single pass at another 10 thou till I got it down to the final size, and it literally just cut absolutely beautiful around the edge. You should be able to see how clean those passes were. So it did a real nice job for a homemade CNC. So it's kind of got a little weight to it. Yeah, that's definitely heavier. I'll have to weigh that and weigh this, but I'm still going to try a little bit of lightning. Countersinking all these will take a little material off. Quarter rounding this a little heavier. I'm not going to round around here because that's where it's got to stay flush with the mounts. So, all right, yeah, today I worked on this for about an hour this morning, trying to finish up these especially this corner here, getting this all to clearance, everything. So I took a little doing this morning to finish it, but I had this all cut out yesterday, Saturday, and I had a little notch here, but it wasn't enough, and then again. So once I got all this done, now it fits nice and flat. And it was catching down here on this corner. It was hitting on this corner. It was hitting against this face here. And then my 2 big holes were just a little hair off. They couldn't have been a millimeter off on, and it should have been just a hair wider out that way and up that way a little bit. So it was like a millimeter this way, millimeter, left and right, to bring it up more in the corner. So this one is at a 1/2 inch hole for a 10 millimeter bolt. So it's a little bigger than I need, but it's no big deal. Washer on there. These bolts this one's too short. I need to go about another 1/4 or 3/8 inch longer than this, about 45 millimeter. That's a 10 by 1.25 pitch. So now that sits on there, there's no chatter. So that's where I'm at. But today I forgot I had to go to my son's wedding reception, post-wedding. Me and the wife couldn't make the wedding because I'd caught that flu there towards the end of February. We were supposed to go to the wedding, and we couldn't go because we were both sick. And then, not 3 weeks later, I catch this vertigo, which I still have. I'm probably between 85 and 90% back to normal, but right now it's still not good. I still couldn't fly with this. I wouldn't want to fly with it. Walking and driving is not a problem, but you do any sudden head movements like that and it just triggers it. Normal operations, I'm pretty much fine. You don't even notice it unless I turn my head too quick, mostly to the right. So Alright, that's kind of all I want to do. I just want to get there. I just got back from the wedding. It was reception. It was from 3 to 6, and we got there about 3:30. Stayed for 2 hours. It was about 5:30, and everybody was pretty much leaving by then. So we said our byes and came home, and it's a 2-hour drive each way. So we just got home at 7 o'clock. It's probably at least 8 o'clock by now. So I didn't get to do as much as I wanted. My next step would be to counterbore these, sink them in, get them to size, and then those be done. I'll round it off a little more and double check everything, go buy some bolts. So once I get these countersunk, I got to get, like I said, 2 different sizes of these socket head cap screws tapered, and the other ones would just be round head socket head. Takes an Allen wrench to put them in. Then just make a bung, figure out where I want it to drain out of for the oil to come out into the tank, and then from the tank it'll get drawn back in through this fitting. So the fitting I put here has got to be just about as big as this. I think it's a -10, so it's like 5/8 inch. So, alright, I think that's going to do her. That's pretty much all I've been working on. I tinkered with that, through the week, and then yesterday I did the whole profile and cut it all out. And then this morning I was only out here for about an hour before I had to clean up and leave. So, well, hope everybody enjoys that. So now, hopefully everybody is on the same page as what this is going to be once it's all said and done. So that's pretty much what it'll look like when it's finished. 4 bolts. That'll be aluminum. I got the aluminum to make it. Now with that broken collet, I'm not sure I can cut it out with that collet anymore. But either that or I'll go back to a 1/4 inch and cut her out a little slower. Still got some quarters that aren't bad, but that 3/8 5/16 end mill is really nice. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. So everybody should have a good idea now. And then again, those 4 bolts just go right here. And then I still have to make all the gussets for this. When I get to making those, I can probably have all them cut out in 15 minutes, ready to weld up. These ones take a little longer. Like I said, you got to make a little paper cardboard template, wrap around there. These got to come clear out to here. You got to make up a little pattern with a piece of paper and then cut out 4 of them. Well, these 2 will be different than these 2 down here, but these will come up this leg. Of course, that's that leg. There'll be 1 triangle in here, another triangle in here. So you got 2 pieces on each, 2 there. 2 here, 1 there, 1 there, and then these 2 here, but there's a total of 8 to fill it all in. So, alright, I'm going to cut it off so I can get this video up. Yep, just went over 18 minutes, now I got to splice it. See what you guys did? Alright, and once that's done, I can get it up on there, and I can get that on there, finish those, and then the rest is putting it all back together. I changed my design idea on the tank, on the intake, excuse me. I'm going to weld tubes on here, straight tubes. I'm going to buy silicone 90-degree elbows like this, but 90. This was 45. And then on the intake manifold flange, like this part down here where it bolts to the cylinder head, I'll weld on like 1 inch of stub tubing, 1 3/4 tube. So then there'll be straight tubes coming out of here, put that 90-degree hose on it, hook onto those. And what that'll do is it'll isolate the intake, this part of the intake carb from the tube that bolts to the head, because heat will generate all the way up through and heat soak this. So by having these couplers on there, the heat source will stop from the block up to there. It won't pass into this, so it'll keep this cooler, and it'll warm up, of course, from being in the engine cowling, but it'll help minimize any vapor lock, especially with today's fuel. But again, by running a fuel in and a return with a restrictor in it, that helps reduce vapor lock as well. So the fuel won't vaporize and cause a vapor lock with hard starting and such. So, but the tubes will be welded on just straight sections, silicone hose to the heads, and so I've got the money to order those pieces. So, all right, I think that's going to do her. Tomorrow I'm going to have to go out and drive. I need to make a little bit more money for other bills. So I'll be out here probably for a little bit, maybe getting some of that drilled out and ready to go. But I'll have it all bolted together, but I won't glue it on until I'm ready to finalize it. So, as you may never know, I still have to go in and plug the intake port, and then there's a big headed plug bolt that goes in there over on this side that I have to plug, and I have to cut the plug down on its thickness. It's a plug like this, but it's bigger than that. I have to shave the head down so it'll clear my pan inside underneath. If I take the bolt out, so that big hole right there, that big hole is going to be right in here. So when I shave the head down, I got to shave it down so it'll clear this, and then that way it won't back. This is all pressure feed. This is pressure side, and this is the original suction side from the oil pickup tube to here. So, but that cavity goes right into this cavity. They're two in the same. So this one will either be a press-in like freeze plug or galley plug, they call them. They're a little cup plug. Press in there, and then or I can thread it, put in a pipe plug, the right size pipe plug. So, alright everybody, that's going to do it now. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing put together and uploaded tonight. So you guys got something to see, and I may have another update by Tuesday. Tomorrow I won't, but Tuesday I may have an update of more of this. So, alright, as always, appreciate everybody taking time to watch my videos. As always, feel free to leave any comments, questions, concerns. Appreciate everybody watching these and taking time to post comments, and they're very welcome. And appreciate the funds from Derek. That's going to buy me my parts for the intake. So as soon as this is done, we'll get that intake mounted. Alright, that's going to do her, and I will see you guys again maybe Tuesday. If not, it'll be again a week ago from today. So as always, everyone take care, and I will see you on the next one. So for now, this is Dino Done Out.